I've got somebody special for you. His name is Jason Berkowitz. And the guy's just got a great vibe to him. He loves the hospitality business. So much so that he's taken to doing training for it. And I think that he's just got such a hospitality mindset that really kind of draws you in and makes you want to be excited about what he's excited about. So I can't wait for you to hear the conversation because I dug it. It was genuine fun. So here we go. You're listening to the Culinary Mechanic podcast. I'm your host, Simon Zatyrka, the founder of Culinary Mechanic, a restaurant advisory firm focused on making kitchens and restaurants run like well-oiled machines. With this podcast, we aim to bring you insights, strategies, tools, and tactics, and sometimes just good old advice and stories that are going to help you run your restaurant better. I hope you dig it because honestly, it's a real labor of love. One thing you could do that would help me a whole lot is to go anywhere that you listen to podcasts and leave a 5-star review. That'll help get the word out so that more people will hear this podcast, and hopefully we can help more restaurants run just a little better. Now please, enjoy the show. Today, I've got Jason Berkowitz of Arrow Up Training. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. You and I have kind of circled around, never really met face to face before, so this has been kind of fun. Having a quick little chat at the beginning here. And it is Culinary Mechanic podcast, so my general thing is to say we don't do formality. We're going to put our foot on the gas, and I'm going to ask you one question right out of the gate and just say, how'd you get into this industry? How did restaurants and F&B and all that stuff kind of come into your world?
I was talking with my mom about this the other day. She thinks I was 15. I think I was 14 in Cleveland, Ohio. And we would drive by this Burger King that was in our neighborhood. And I just was like, and then not too long before I started working there, she ended up renting a little retail shop next door to sell clothes. And I would show up after school and I would go and I would hang out and I would just stare at the Burger King. And I'm like, go make friends with a manager there. She's like, wait, what? I'm like, I want to work there. She's like, you want to go work there? First off, I think you're too young to work there. Secondly, why there? I'm like, I don't know. There's a vibe going on. I eat there. We love it there. We walk in the door. There's always a line. There's something about it. I want to go work there. She's like, all right, let me see what I can do. And, work permits and whatnot. And we're talking, you know, pre-yacht. So it's a little easier in Cleveland, Ohio to make stuff happen under the radar.
Yeah.
And I remember applying. I remember my interview with the manager. I remember looking at everybody's uniform and just feeling this and thinking, I got to be a part of this. There is no way I'm not going to be a part of this. And he, I think, just saw the enthusiasm and the dedication and the commitment, was like, all right, I'm going to figure out a way to make this thing work. And lo and behold, they figured it out. And I remember putting on that visor, that Burger King visor, and that shirt, and walking in day one. And the fries smelled different that day. Everything smelled different that day and felt different. And the greeting and just the overall vibe of a restaurant. I mean, it's a live installation. And it blew me away. And they were like, okay, well, we can't have you in front because you're too young and you look too young, and get in the back. Sure, put me on hot equipment. So started on fries, literally, started on fries, don't salt them, moved my way to Whoppers. Then I challenged the whole kitchen of who was the fastest Whopper topper. And because cleaner, faster, stronger. And then I just started to work my way up, and they realized, okay, you couldn't stop me. I was moving to drive through. I was moving to cashier. It was unstoppable. I made friends. That was where it began. And then I was there for a couple of years and saw this little coffee house at the local mall I would go to, and smelled the coffee. Probably hadn't really thought about it. It smelled the fries and I had to be there. Then I smelled the coffee, about 16, and I was drinking it at that point. I was like, yeah, I'm going to work there. And that was that.
I love it. That's awesome. um,
It's
uh,
fun. It's fun.
yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, I
And that's why I
think that,
talk about vibe matters so much to anybody. Don't underestimate the power of anybody from all ages. You want to attract all ages? Just a vibe.
yeah, yeah, I think that for me, in the kitchens that I ran and the restaurants that I was a part of, fun was like the thing. Like we work hard, like no doubt, right? Like we're gonna work hard. I worked in some restaurants that were big, man, 400 seats sometimes. I even ran a place that would top out at 550, but it didn't matter. It's like you can joke around a little bit and you can have like but have fun because gosh, you're gonna grind, right? So I think that vibe is huge. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
And you touched on fun, which even goes a little bit further. I think there's a shift in conversation that's happening. Whereas if you walk into your restaurant, if you're an executive, if you're a leader, you know, and you see coworkers talking to each other, there was a period of time where there was a time to lean, time to clean. And sure, you got to get it done.
Right.
But we can't underestimate the power of building relationships at work. And I think friendships, now there's a way to do it right. You don't turn your back to the door. Customer comes first. You don't wait to tell the end of the story and then greet the customer. There's the
Right.
right way to do it. But this kind of command and control, no fun was a little bit of a period, and we've moved out, especially as the employees have taken a little bit more power to get them to work with us. So I'm a huge fan of walking in and encouraging healthy friendships and picking that off and sort of igniting conversation there. And again, turning so that everyone's towards the door, everyone's towards the tickets, or everyone's towards the line, everyone's being safe, right? There's a way to do it. But it's good. And it's a great way to help turnover, and which is a big problem of employees not showing up, because get them to show up for each other. Because if you care about the people who you work with, you care about if you left them hanging that day.
Yeah,
And so this all matters.
for sure. Yeah, there's nothing worse than going, hey man, you let your team down and somebody going, I mean, that's you lost, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
lost. That's good stuff. Um, all right. So you get in, you feel a vibe. That doesn't like you could feel a bunch of vibes in the world. So what keeps you rolling? Like how do you like, man? I'm not gonna lie. I went back through your LinkedIn profile and I was like, man, this guy's done some fun, some big cool stuff.
Right
Like
back at you.
how does that go? Like what drives well, clearly you have a lot of energy. Like I've listened to you speak a couple times on the group that we're both a part of, and like, you have a lot of energy. So that's awesome. But like what takes all that energy and like hurls it forward into your career?
Curiosity and
Nice.
and caring. My why, if anyone's into the idea of like what's your why. And so there's the Simon Sinek, a great thought leader, and he talks about Apple was a company who they were a why company than a what company. They wanted to help you solve a problem. They did it through computers. And why you do something, people would say, I go to work to feed my family. Sure, but there's something that we had at childhood that drove our choice of work and why we're attracted to restaurants and different things. And I think I realized a bit ago, and it's driven everything, is my why is to help people, including myself, show up for themselves so that
Yeah.
then we can show up for each other. And what keeps driving me is this opportunity to make an environment a little bit stronger, make myself a little bit stronger, to help people understand where they fit and help
Nice.
them then fit. And that keeps going. And something that I've loved is finding great concepts and finding great people and then coming in and helping that concept grow, because the electricity's there, the idea, the installation. And I was saying this earlier with Burger King. I mean, to me, all great restaurants or all brands are an installation. They're an art installation. So we all play our
Nice.
role. It's theater to a degree. So then how do I help companies with a good concept lay down what the expectation is for everybody so that then they know what showing up means? and how do we help that happen and track that so that you get the feedback of it. So all the changes have literally been this idea of here's the next opportunity to get in and help the environment get stronger and people feel like they belong. And then in that case, the business works better. I grew up in a small business family. I'm all about small business is the heart of the community. This is where I learned my rules. This is where I learned, my role in society. And so all of this comes together. You help the business, you help the people, you're helping your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. It's funny how I think that I thought for years about like the community being the kitchen, right? Like hard to go outside of that, I think, and sometimes it was just the restaurant. It was like that became your world, right? I mean, that's the stereotype is like all the servers, all the cooks are sitting on the same bar stools at the same place together every night because it becomes that like family's not the right word, but the community, right? Like just it becomes that group that just sort of takes care of each other. But I like the fact that it for you it extends out into the community because it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and within the community, in this book that I'll plug, Please Don't Sleep with the Host, I talk about, a book that
Yes.
I wrote, that there'll be another edition, but this one's great. Grab it now. Um, I talk about how important it is that the front of house and back of house are hanging out and talking and saying hi to each other. There are far too many establishments where it's a little bit of the Montagues and the Capulets. You
Yeah.
had that Romeo and
Yeah.
Juliet battle. And I never liked that. I never liked that differentiation. And while I took more of a path of front of house for a period of time and then went the path of general manager over kitchen manager, let's say, it was really important to me that everybody in the front of house who came in knew always said hi to the back of house before they started their shift or
Yeah.
the heart of house, right? And to connect that. And I would push the same from the heart of house to the front of house. So I've always been encouraging that. And then as I grew in my roles to overseeing all departments as an operator, it was still always the same. You would have no idea where my love was or where my encouragement was from either department to come together because you had the back of house community, you had the front of house community. It's one community within that. The stronger that is, the stronger that helps the larger community.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's so you mentioned that they Montagues and Capulets. It's so interesting, like going into restaurants and like there's some days where you like, oh, okay, so there's a divide here, like that big stainless steel thing that is the line, as it were, that divides the front and the back. That stands in between you guys, huh? And I think that the best joints I've ever seen that functioned as well-oiled machines were the ones where that wasn't allowed to happen, right? Like it just wasn't allowed. Like, I nowadays I teach chefs. I'm like, if you're not talking to the front of house manager every day, 3, 4 times a day about what's happening in your world, and like they can protect you from the disasters, they can enhance the greatness, like if you got 50 pounds of halibut rolling in and it looks better than you've ever fucking seen it, like you should be speaking about that.
Yeah.
The front of the house should know, like, oh my god, the chef is so excited about the halibut right now,
Yeah.
right? Like it just came off the, whatever. I mean, I'm up here in Seattle where like you can do these special things where you get the fish on the hook with the pilot like holding it in the picture, like that's promotion, right? But if everybody isn't aware of it, like the communication piece, it just doesn't go. So it's really fun to think about, like, the great runs, the great restaurants, they communicate from front to back. That line doesn't exist because if it does, man, it's challenging. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the grind of running your kitchen? Imagine, kitchen's humming along, people are on task, and you have the time to be creative and still make it home to see your family. Well, Culinary Mechanic is here with the strategies, tools, and tactics to help you be the leader everybody wants to work with. If you'd like to find out more about how Culinary Mechanic can help you run your restaurant like a well-oiled machine, I invite you to use the link in the show notes to book a 30-minute free consultation call.
And part of that begins with it takes curating, it takes cultivating, it
Yeah.
takes ongoing communication, it takes breaking bread together. I think we missed a lot with losing a bit of family meals and things like that. But something that's always been important to me in development for teams from somebody's first job, right, which is key, is planting that seed and saying, um, unless until you walk in their shoes, right, and maybe go do it, have a little respect for it. The for the back of house coming in, right? Do you want to go deal with that customer? Do you want to go deal with this person? Do you want to
Yeah.
deal with these personalities? Do you want to deal with all this stuff? Like, do you know what it's like telling no to somebody in their face at that point and getting pushback and all of this and striving, or when they want the medium well done salmon and you know it's wrong, but you're dealing with this? It sucks. And at the same time, there's a hotline to the front of house server. One thing I would do with front of house training is one of my big pet peeves that I would shut down immediately is any front of house manager, I don't care who you are, walking into the kitchen and saying something coming around the corner. I don't care if you're talking to the cook, to the expo, to anybody. You do not walk into any kitchen, especially none that I'm overseeing, and just start talking. And part of myself included as the chief operating officer over 1,200 people, I will walk there and you will have no idea I'm in there. I'm just standing next to the expo waiting for them to communicate because there's almost all this in their head. So anyways, point is, I will do an exercise with the front of house that I'll have them talk to somebody and then I'll just keep tapping them on the shoulder and go, hey, I need you. Hey, it's annoying. You're in the middle of a conversation. What are you doing? Right. So again, you flip it that you role play on both sides so that they can have empathy of what the other person's going through.
Right.
That's a foundation to then say, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. You deal with that. I respect that you deal with that. I'm going to stay in my lane. Now let's build off of that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got your exercises, I got mine.
What's
Uh,
yours?
the one like that never fails to kill me is, um, a sous chef looks at me as I'm running the kitchen, and maybe I'm not on the line and he's on the line, and he'll look at me or she'll look at me and go, "Chef, I don't have the salmon for table 42." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have it?" "Oh, we ran out." I'm like, "Sweet." And so it used to be that I would go fix it, right? I'd go to the manager, the general manager, and I'd say, "Hey, I need you to go to table 52 and tell them that we don't know how to count," right? And that was okay. And on occasion, I would just like shoulder it and go to the table and be like, "Hi, how are you? I cook great stuff, but I can't count. I apologize. I don't have your fish." Um, and then I realized, no, we're gonna like take this down a level. And I would make this, and I made it like standard procedure. You're running the line, you go tell the server, and you go tell the manager that has happened, and be clear about it. I don't have this and I don't have this, and hey, it's 86th. And next time, figure out how to get a countdown in place, because we work with these things called POS systems and they have countdowns, man. Figure it out,
Right.
right? But you're going to endure the pain.
Right.
And I actually had, and that all came from way back in like 2004. I worked in a place and we made crab cakes fresh, and then I don't know why, but we froze them. And so the chef would have us stick it in the microwave and then onto the flat top. And one day the pantry cook got in a rush and he didn't nuke it for quite long enough. And it went on the flat top and it got golden brown and it went out to the table and it was cold in the middle. And the server came back, and the server was a good old fashioned, like old guard server. Guy was probably in his late 50s. And he was angry and he's yelling at the chef, and the chef's like, "You." And he points at the pantry cook and he goes, "Come here." And he walked him out to the table. And he says, "I want you to apologize for serving something that wasn't right." And you know what? Like that cook, like the guy, like skyrocketed after that. Like he understood what was happening, and it was painful. Like, you'd never do that. Like, he would stop people from making similar mistakes. He's like, no, 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 not on my shift. Right? He became a sous chef not long after that because his accountability went through the roof.
I love this story. If there is also, and in that moment, which is a great moment, the sous chef and the leader pulled this person after they had this conversation or before or at some point said, I want you to know something though. All of us have made some mistake that
Yes.
got us to jump to the next level. This is yours. We're not bitch slapping you. We're not shaming you. We're just making this a moment that will impact because we think these are the moments that turn good into great. We've all gone through it. Lick your wounds, show up tomorrow, and let's be better together.
Well, that's the
Because
bar stool, right? that
that's
that
the
for back in the day, that was the bar stool. It's like at the end
that
of
was
the
the
night.
bar stool. And hopefully it's a little bit more programmed into it. And with what you're doing and with what
Totally.
I'm doing in leadership coaching to a degree, but more with what you're focused on, it's programming that side to it and saying when we when we're so disoriented by shame, we lose a little bit of what the learning and the message is. And we have to
Sure.
understand also that a lot of the people that are coming up today and doing it haven't had as many face-to-face interactions. There's a lot on their phone. There's a lot less interpersonal communication. Therefore, they will shut down and leave and not grow. And it sucks because we need to get our asses kicked sometimes.
Yeah,
And so there is a little bit of this new school to fold into it,
for
to
sure.
be programmed with it, to say that screw the sandwich of the compliment, the insult, the compliment, but we got to add a little bit of like, just that idea of it happened to me in a different way, in some way, I did something careless.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. Just a reminder that the younger generations have been more in their phones, and some of them are more in their phones than any of us, right? But I think that that's interesting. I mean, I definitely come from a different time. I mean, I'm 50,
Me
almost
too.
52 years old, and when I came up, the shame was the thing that you went, oh hell, I'll never do that again. There was fear, coming out of that and just making it like, yeah, I personally, when I was teaching sous chefs to do add that step into their world, I would look at them and go, this is going to hurt the first time, right? Like,
Hmm.
but I need you to come do this with me.
Hmm.
And
Right.
once they got
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but also like them understanding like what goes into that, right? Like,
Right.
like, hey, you've got to talk to the manager so that the manager can, like, the manager's got to go do that, right?
Hmm.
You and it, um, and I also really have tried recently and recently is 10 years, um, to say, how do we like not get ourselves in that position, right? What are the and what are the communication pieces, right? Like, how do we communicate this so that it never happens, right? What are the steps? What are the systems? What are the tools that you can use so that, like, you're not in this? And one of those is like, okay, when you get down to six of anything, it goes in the computer, right? Whether that's the cook or the sous chef saying, "Hey, Mr. or Miss Manager, can you put this countdown on salmon for me?"
It's great.
And then communicating across, because um, more than anything, the communication pieces, um, it's critical. Right?
A huge, I think a huge focus that um, is happening, and what you're talking about is exactly this, is winning back minutes in a day. And you have two problems that are really happening and plaguing the industry right now. Number one, you have turnover. And what I'm saying is if you can have that conversation with an employee that builds them up and doesn't make them leave because they're not used to awkward conversations and they come back the next day, it makes sense to take an extra minute than all the time, 5 minutes, and all the extra time that you're taking to hire somebody new. So we need to lower turnover by one person, just if we can do that. The second is people don't want to be managers as much as before because you're dealing with a bunch of crap and it's a pain in the ass and it sucks to talk to a table and it sucks to deal with this. And so you're talking about like the old stitching time saves nine, an ounce of prevention saves a pound of cure. By putting this system into place and taking 60 seconds to call something out and make it happen, you're saving 7 awful, awkward minutes, which is a plus of 6 minutes and so much more joy in the day, which means people want to be managers more. So that little step, anybody listening to this or who works with you cannot underestimate how much that little step has such a compound effect in, at the end of the day, somebody going home, somebody having an extra drink or not that shift, then feeling more tired the next day, and then hating that next day. And there's a compound element. So look at all of these things like a snowball effect. And you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Pick a count, put it in, do it, track it, watch all of this extra time you get back and less headache. And then more managers rise, and then you get to grow out of your position because you're developing people up.
Yeah. I think the other thing I really I just love to put in people's brains is if you can get like we work in this is a stressful set of jobs, right? These are stressful roles. If a leader or one of the leaders is able to make a decision that lowers stress by, I don't know, 2%. Like think of how much, like it's just so much easier to, like refiring something or holding back the table because you got a perfectly cooked steak. That grill guy is going, oh, I gotta sell this thing. We can't. Sorry, man. We're waiting to figure out what happened on salmon because they, like that's the added stress. And I think that I personally am just always looking for ways to bring stress levels down, and I think that I love the thought that yeah, nobody wants to manage it like they used to. I mean, I for a while I couldn't get a cook to go, I want to be the sous chef. And I was like, why? And they're like, that's too much fucking stress, man.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to
There's
deal with it.
that guy works like 60 hours a week.
Yeah,
And that's when I realized, as leaders, we have to make our jobs look enticing. So our job has to like we have to do things to make that,
yeah.
you know.
And that's the little things build up. On the other side, Tom Colicchio told me before we opened up a restaurant, no one's dying on the operating table. So chill the fuck out. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you, and I think I don't know the answer. I mean, I know the answer depending on the institution, but I'd love your opinion. Do you like when the servers put all the orders in and the kitchen fires, time fires, or do you like when the servers choose when to fire the main course?
Oh, that's a lot of question. Because there's a lot of trust in there. You know what I mean?
Well, you talked
Uh,
about they're sending the steak and the table's not cleared. And a lot of that happens when there's the two problems on either side.
totally.
One, you sent it, it wasn't ready. And if it's not ready, you got to take it back. The other one is uh they forgot to fire and now it's too late, or they just forgot to fire and it's never coming. And so, and it pushes the time back. It's a trade-off.
Yeah, for
So which I
sure.
don't know which one you like.
I don't know. There's a part of me as an operator that goes, oh, just let me time it for you. Right. However, I'm probably, even though there's a little bit more trust involved, and that's hard, right? I'm probably inclined to say I would prefer it to be timed by the server. And the trust then that I have to have, that we all have to have, is that we have trained our people, and this is very much up your alley. We have trained our people to be feeling the rhythm of that table, right? They understand where they are. These folks are in a hurry. I'm going to fire this a little bit earlier, right? It's giving the training giving the training all the way around, but really like empowering that server, a great server running their station is the general manager of that world. And
Yeah.
that's really what I want. I want a server who's going to come in and understand that they are going to maximize their check average based on what that guest needs.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, sometimes as a back of house operator, I would probably say, no, let me control it. But I think I'd probably rather spend the time and energy to make sure that in within that installation, to use your word, the role is developed such that that server is that server and the whether you want to call them a back waiter or a busboy, they're clearing things and they're all working as that small, detailed, well-oiled machine, right? That
Yeah.
little mechanism is spinning. That's probably my preference. But boy, I'm likely to be in the minority, you know.
I've
Um,
I've seen it work and fail both ways.
totally. And it's everything fails at some point. Every piece, like every cog loses a tooth once in a while and skips.
Mhm.
There's no doubt about it, right?
I would for managers who I love, I got one of the sort of corrections I would do is depending on how big the floor was, but I like managers to you'd have multiple managers if the floor is big enough.
Right.
And I liked them to consistently look at the tables and check the POS. So one of my trainings that I would do for them is I would come in and ask them, right, what's coming next on table 12? They're like, if they didn't know, I'm like, then you don't have a pulse of what's going on your floor. And I love when managers over sections know exactly, they're just constantly, I mean, they're spending their time dealing with the guests, but they know to quickly go in, check the POS, know what's coming, know what's to look, know to be a backstop to say, don't you have a steak coming? And I don't see a steak knife on there, right? Or, hey, the better way to do it is, hey, there's not a steak knife there. I see. I got some. Do you want me to drop that on the table for you? Right?
Right.
Can I jump in? So you've informed them and you've solved it as well. But that's kind of a solution that I would find depending on where I was. I became you know obsessed over that. But now that there's a lot of handhelds, it's a little bit harder, but it's also easier to fire something. Um,
Totally.
voila. I don't know. It's a good meaty conversation for people to figure out,
Yeah,
right?
I
That's
mean,
actually where the rubber meets the road.
absolutely. I mean, I'll never forget the first general manager I ever saw who, just like you say, he was in the POS. And when I first met him and he came into the restaurant where I was working through the company, and he's been with the company for probably 15, 20 years. And he was in the POS all the time at lunch. And I was like, the fuck is he doing? And then one day I just started listening, really truly listening to what was happening on the other side of the line. And his whole thing was we were taking too long to serve lunch, right? People weren't able, that we were a destination restaurant for dinner, but there was just enough business lunch that he wanted to cultivate it. So he was in there going, it's been 6 minutes since they sat down. Why don't they have a drink? Why don't we have a drink order in the machine?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and
yeah.
he
It's
was running
great.
it that way. Oh, it's amazing. We went from doing, I don't know, 25, 30 covers a day for lunch to doing 100 every single day
It's
within a
great.
year. And it was
It's
because he was driving that. And he'd say, Simon, I need lunch tickets to be 12 minutes every time, and he held my feet to the fire. But man, when we got there, it was amazing.
I love it. And a takeaway for people, right? If you're seeing, I'm going back to you have the mechanics, you have the system, you have training the system, and then one of the most important things you have for anybody listening is the why I'm doing it. And are you communicating to people? There's an old school mentality of leaders that sort of hold the why and they just do it.
Right.
And there's a new school mentality that wants everybody to have buy-in and an understanding of it. And there's great old school leaders that did this. I'm just saying there was a curmudgeon element of it that was there for a while. That
Totally.
they sort of they were holding the secret until they were ready to catch you in the act and calculated. So I think all leaders, what's great is to let people know what your intention is, why you're looking at it, what's the purpose of that, get them to be a part of the solution along the way. It's amazing the effects that just talking to somebody and saying, "Hey, look, lunch matters. I want to go from 30 covers to 100. I think because we're at dinner, people want a slower pace, so we have to change our mentality. It takes a lot to change it for lunch. One way that I'm going to look at it, I'm a fan of Moneyball. I'm a fan of the seconds and the minutes, and I want to get on first faster. So I'm going to look at that. We're going to get on first faster. And I'm going to look at that, and then we're going to come and I'm going to measure it for you so you can focus on what you need to focus on. Everyone be like, son of a bitch, and everyone's going to make more money. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you lead with that one. Hey, I've got a way for you to make more money. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
and you have to, it becomes now in the back house. You start to look at that. What's great is people are sharing tips now. There's a lot of different ways, service charges and things like that have come because I do think it should rise together. So yeah. Um, and to understand that the business owner isn't the bad person, that we need them to make money. We
Yeah.
need them to make money because somebody put money into this and they're not going to put money into the next one if they don't. So everybody needs to.
Right.
I love showing people how the numbers work out with stuff like that. It's amazing development.
Yeah. I was having this type of conversation with a pretty young chef about, I don't know, 9 months ago. And he's like, "Oh, so what you're telling me is it's more is more. No, not less is more." He goes, everybody talks about less is more, and guy's probably 26 years old. And I was like, "You're right. Less is more is an aesthetic." I said, "But more is really business. Like it is for better or for worse, right? The more money that the owner makes, you got to trust that they're gonna that it's gonna rain down. I said, and the best way that you can do that is to just do your job with flair and gusto and have fun with it and make sure that like they see that you're into it and that you're making decisions, that if there's a problem, you're coming with solutions. And those are the people who make more money, right? The owners go, "Oh, that person cares for it." Right? They care for my business. They care. I'm going to make sure that they make more money. And when he sort of saw and felt that, he was like, "Well, if that's the case, then we should do this." And he's like, I can do this and this, and we can make more money, and it's not a lot more effort. And I was like, now you're understanding how to compound things. But I
It's
think
great.
it's I think it's
It's a farm
people
league.
understanding like how it all works.
Yeah.
You
And so
know,
it's taking the time to spend with them and to invite them into the conversation and to not be afraid of it and to grow them and be the farm league for people. I love it. It's fun, it's amazing. And again, going back to the community, it's the best thing you could do because you're growing somebody who's either going to grow in your organization or they're going to grow their own organization. And maybe they'll look to you and you can help that happen. And you've expanded, but you've played a role in building the community. And that matters. And one way or another, it comes back to us.
yeah, yeah. I think that one of the things that I love about the community of it all is that, you know, 10, 15, 20 years on from where I have been, because I've been all up and down the West Coast, now in Seattle, is I still have uh, social media is magic, by the way, but I still have people who will reach out to me. I'm like, every once in a while, I look at my DMs on Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook a lot, but I'm like, huh, so and so messaged me. I haven't worked with them since 2005,
Yeah.
right? And it's 2024.
Yeah. It's great.
This podcast has brought some of that, like people who are like, "Oh my gosh, I love what you're saying. I love what you're doing," and I'm like, "Well, gosh, you're a chef in your own right now. Let's get
Yeah.
you on here." And I've had a few of them,
That's great.
and it's been fun. But I think that there's some what I could describe as the Uncle Simon phenomenon, right? Like good old Uncle Simon. Here we go. Like we like that team. We've always liked that team. But I think that getting leaders to understand that, gosh, this is important stuff. You can have some legacy. You can have some reputation for being a good, fun, profitable leader. All those things. You're, not only for the owners, but for the people that you're working
You know, and it's and in the path it's growth, one of the big things to for people to find out or to recognize is that people want to be led, and people want to know that there's somebody that's taking charge, making decisions, sometimes even if they're the wrong ones. I learned people would rather follow decisiveness off a cliff multiple times than indecision.
with.
And that someone's holding everybody accountable. And one of the hardest things going from, employee to shift lead is
Oof.
recognizing that actually the coolest thing you could do is call somebody out for showing up late or for making sure somebody does their side work or for holding the team accountable. It's not uncool. It's them who put you in a position that you had to have that conversation. And to know that you're doing that, people want that. And they want to have that, and they want to have somebody who leads. And so it's great. And then you grow and you grow, as you said. And so it's an incredible gift to an environment because that's how we're built. We want somebody to take control, lead us, and then hold everybody around us accountable. And look, organized people want to work in organized environments. So it's going to help turnover. It's going to help attract the right people. It's all of it. I'm going to turn left real quick. I know if we're catching to the hour or not, or time, something that I love of the conversion to Culinary Mechanic. So it's not a hard left pivot, but it's diagonal.
Okay.
Is taking what we're talking about, but building on this it's the operational structure that keeps it moving along. It's the gears, it's the cogs that you mentioned, cog in a wheel, but then there's cogs, right? Cost of goods sold, but let it overlap and be whatever type of, fun play on words. I think what's so important is that the systems, the mechanics, the engines, the wheels, the way it all comes together is so vital to make it happen. As we talked about, call when there's only 5 salmon left, put it in the computer, all of these things, because what it does is it allows us as humans then, which is what we want to be, not nagged, not bothered, but enjoy, play around, vibe, all of that. It allows us to be proactive and less reactive and responsive. And therefore, then we have more fun. So the idea to me of why systems matter so much, not even just in the economics of it all, because systems save money,
Right.
is so that you can let humans be humans and be weird and be strange and be anything you need to be because the guardrails are in place. We know what the expectation is. We all have a system for doing something. Now let's bring our own unique personality to the moment because it will work because the car is moving, the mechanics are moving. And I really like that branding switch. I think it's powerful.
Nice. Yeah. Culinary Mechanic, it's funny. It was a joke 10 years ago. It was somebody was like, "Oh, you're a chef." I'm like, "I'm not a chef anymore. I'm a fucking culinary mechanic."
It's
Like, "What do you
great.
mean?" I'm like, "I ripped that some bitch apart, oil it, clean the contacts, put it back together. I'm a mechanic." And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, oh, is that good?" I'm like, "It is what it is, right?" Like, but for me, it has become this thing of you've got to have that machine running, right? You've got to have things going. Otherwise, you don't get to be creative. You don't get to like pull in that cool ingredient or talk to the forager who comes dirty to your back door and go, "Hey man, I got 5 pounds of morels because it rained yesterday," right? Like you don't get to do that. And
I
and
got
and
truffles in my wife's purse in a
right.
napkin that she smuggled over.
And or you're not gonna get to do that very long if you're not right. Like, I was just having this conversation with somebody recently, and I said, "How tired are you of seeing the guy get the James Beard Award or the Food and Wine Best New Chef Award or whatever award it is, and 9 months later their restaurant's closed?" Like I want to scream every time that happens. It's like, dude, please manage your business. Please manage your business because I want to keep going to your fucking amazing restaurant where I get impeccable service. The wine pairing is dope, and it's maybe it's controversial, and the food is amazing. but you're not running your business. Like, you don't get to do the fun stuff if you can't handle like the mechanics of it for me. And some do, some do. They last. But at the end of the day, there's a certain level of structure that has to be there, or that is there, whether it's corporate looking or not, right? But the great ones have some form of structure.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned that in our pre-chat, as you said, because my job about corporate, right? Corporate's coming in. Because my job for many years is you have something that's working as far as there's people at the door, something's exciting, right? I was talking about this. Now we need to put infrastructure to scale. There's always going to be pushback. There's always going to be fear. But again, if you talk about the why, you put things in place,
Yeah.
people will eventually realize that they get their time back. They minimize their headaches. They get to be people again. So it's how we communicate it. And it's less about corporate coming down and more about systems blossoming to support us and our growth. And I've done that multiple times. And even in the corporate side of it, people freak out because now their hands off the wheel. And do you need me? You know, people worry about growing because I'll put a system in place so somebody could take a vacation. They think it's so I can fire them. And either way, it means you get time off. So
Right.
we also have to understand that sometimes people are adverse because then they're like, well, do you need me? Or they're a little bit nervous and it's an insecurity. So again, how do we communicate it? What are we putting into place? And how are we fostering that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It all comes together. And also going back to the systems, with a lot of these companies, there's so much tech now that helps us. Just scheduling alone. How many times has a chef spent calling around or doing something because somebody called off as opposed to using a scheduling software that they can just throw it up and see who can grab the shift, or inventory, sheet to shelf in a digital way that populates everything that you don't need to write it and then transfer it over. There's a onboarding digitally. There's a lot of time that we can get back if we adopt some of these systems that then you can
Absolutely.
be present to be the person.
Yeah, absolutely. One of you talk about pushback. I remember that I worked with a group, and a couple of the chefs were like, I don't really like some of these systems. And I said, look, well, here's how I need you to think about it. When you ever gone bowling, they're like, yeah, I go bowling. You ever see that lane where they put the bumpers up? They're like, yeah. I'm like, the systems or the bumpers?
Mhm.
I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, I'm like, that means you can't go off the rails, right? You can't go in the gutter. We're not going to let you.
Right.
The systems are there to keep you, but more than that, if you really understand it, if you really embrace the system, it means you can throw it as hard as you want, and no matter what, you're going to get down to the end.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, I'm like, it's really there for you.
Yeah.
It's not there to make your life, but um, it's all about evolution, right? We get into this, so many of us get into this industry and we do forever. And at some point you have to understand that it isn't your doing, it's your thinking that gets you paid, that gets people moving forward.
Yeah. And I think something that's really important, and whether you're doing this yourself or coaching them up to do this, is it's really hard to build a ship and sail it at the same time. Right. So when I would go in, let's take Umami Burger, I went as the VP of hospitality and then VP of ops. But I said, no one talked to me for the first 30 days. I'm going to put training together, because the second that I do the job of an operator, I'm going to be putting out fires and can no longer put things in place that's going to prevent all these fires. And a lot of people freak out and it's hard. So if somebody's already up and running, for you to come in and help coach them up and to understand it doesn't need to be so complicated. Let's start with something. You need a training program, get the cook to write what their morning tasks are down. You need a checklist in the morning to make sure prep's consistent. Have the next person who does it just literally write it down. You'll type it up, you'll put it into place, you start to go. And it really is about eating an elephant a bite at a time, because they're always like, I don't have time to do it, but you always have time to fix it. So start putting it into place, get you involved, get a team member involved. Somebody wants the extra hours. because once you start to build the structure, momentum begets momentum and it really starts to work. I was saying this before, and I guess I never thought that it worked on this. I was saying this in one of our talks at a sailor's celebration of life who passed away. One of their quotes that their son quoted was, forget all that, but they're a big sailor. The hardest part of about sailing the ocean is untying from the dock. I love that. And that fits with what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Untied from the dock. That's the hardest part, we know, but it's going to work from there.
Well, gosh, we got deep for a minute there, didn't we?
Fun.
Awesome.
Love it.
Jason, thank you for coming to play with us. I love it. I love yeah, one of the joys of doing this podcast is to just getting different people to come in and talk to me, and because we, at the end of the day, we get down to the nuts and the bolts of like running good restaurants.
Yeah.
But from so many different angles. It's just it's fun.
It's fun. Thanks for having me.
Let's do the plug. Arrow Up Training. Tell me,
Arrow. Yep.
give me 60 seconds or less on what's happening. What are you doing?
Arrow Up Training, arrowuptraining.com. If you're looking for the littlest of things, of anti-harassment to restaurant safety to OSHA, we got it. And then we have been working as well, where I think we complement each other nicely, is online courses developing supervisors into shift leads. And the way that's one of been our biggest products that's starting to work out now with people, is helping them with the initial soft skills of, how do I have an awkward conversation? How do I balance myself? What's empathy? What's communication? What's accountability? All of this. How do I talk about the why? What's nice is we're rolling out all of these programs with a lot of these companies. That can only go so far. Then you tap somebody like yourself to come in and help shape them around and build the systems around so it all works together. We're really helping with the soft skills of everybody.
Right.
And what's cool about it is we're interviewing, because there's only so much you and I can do as not old guards, but medium guards. And we interview, an 18-year-old talking about their time having a conversation. One said, how do I do something wrong without telling somebody they're doing something wrong? And then she gives a lesson that she learned. So our online courses are really helping the community of these future leaders learn with each other, which then would fold into what you're doing to say, great, you're going to build the systems around them and take them up to that next level of true, in-store and above store leadership.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to say to you one more time, thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate you coming to play. To all of you out there, keep listening, because the funny thing is, every week that I look at the numbers, they get just a little bit bigger, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much, and have a great one.